Leo people are easily recognizable when they walk into a room because they seem to light it up, right? I think when it comes to generalizations about personality in the zodiac, this is largely where it comes from because some of the signs are just so obvious, but it makes perfect sense why this would be so. And the very act of illumination is in the nature of the motivation at the core of the sign. So there is very little blockage between the motive and the embodiment. The same is true for this mission. Leo, in a lot of ways, seeks to shine light on the problem and thus could be interpreted as having a priority of energy generation. We can take that in a very literal sense in the task of exploring sustainable energy sources to power future progress, and also as social energy and momentum towards improving our interactions. As I've been doing this research, the most impressive part is not so much the satisfaction of pieces falling into place and finding data to support the hypothesis, but the meta-hypothesis that there are patterns that people may already be subconsciously aware of and identifying with. When I brought up the question of who do you look up to as an innovator, do you have a personal example of someone who is working to make the world a better place? The results have been consistent, not just with the nominees, but the ones doing the nominating. Put another way, though granted my sample size is quite small and hardly conclusive, the percentage is pretty striking of people who are not only identifying with the mission of their sign as a priority themselves personally, but also noticing the work of these people we might identify as generals, the ones they are tuning into are commonly of their faction as well. It's been pretty striking. Or if it's not theirs exactly, it has been so far 100% within the same element. And moreover, some of them have strange synergistic ties to the areas of the world that I have hypothesized about having resonance with the factions, which suggests that there is also a relationship between location and mission focus. So that's really something interesting that I'm excited to explore. This is a little off topic, but since we're sciencing right now, it might be worth noting here. There seems to be a connection between being personally charged with the greatest problem at your doorstep and being uniquely equipped to not only tackle it via your personal skills and aptitude, but then take your success at doing that and present it to the rest of the world as part of a bigger solution. Archetypically, it would come as no surprise because the means to defeat the monster lies within it or its nature. But I guess I somehow assumed that with our increased mobility and global consciousness, it would not be so localized anymore. But now I'm not so sure, so I need to keep working on that premise, but it's a fun hypothesis to work from. Back to Leo specifically, we might say that the victory condition is to create passive or automatic energy generation systems to fully replace fossil fuels, not just for our energy consumption needs, but to approach levels of energy generation that are so in excess of what we can feasibly produce right now, that they can be used to do other things, such as sequester carbon. I asked the nominator in question, my dad, a Leo, if he thought that carbon would also fall under that mission, and he said definitely yes, that they are intimately connected. So I meditated about that, and I think it's something alchemical, like turning gold in the form of sunlight into metaphorical lead in the form of solids by splitting water into hydrogen and carbon. The hydrogen is used as a more efficient fuel source to replace petroleum. And in a solid form, the carbon can be easily used for things like artificial diamonds or simply burying and sequestering as a non-toxic byproduct or other things. He's a chemist, not me. I don't nerd out quite as hard about that specific science. I think this might be likened to something like Genesis allegory, dividing the light from the darkness. I know I don't usually get too far into the actual astrological language, but because of Leo's association with Lucifer the Lightbringer, I think it's appropriate to note the ability to discriminate, to distinguish between things is essentially what first principles thinking is. And when we talk about the atomic, that's exactly the level that we are on. That's not to say that every Leo should strive to be a nuclear physicist or anything like that. It's just to clarify the mission as fundamentally changing the way that we think about these alchemical conversions. To quote the Sharif nominee loosely from his TED Talk, when the energy source is free, you don't have to prioritize maximizing the efficiency of the conversion. Instead, you look to maximize the output or even other things that can be accomplished with the waste heat. So I'm a little bit hesitant and reluctant to introduce Bill Gross as the nominee for potential general of Leo because I have been unable to confirm his actual birthday. For some reason, some of these were really, really hard to find. The only clue that I got on that one was a YouTube video of his staff telling him happy birthday by rearranging the petals of his innovative solar grid. This was posted in December, so do people actually post up videos exactly when they are shot? Not necessarily. So my guess is if he is not actually a Leo, he is a Sag, and therefore there is some elemental continuity there. Bill is the founder of Idea Lab and works with startup companies, and that is mostly what he is known for, but his latest innovation stems from a lifelong fascination with solar energy. Heliogen is his company, which is currently improving solar tech to not only ridiculous levels of efficiency and autonomy, but also concentrating the heat outputs to such high temps that it can split water, which has up till now been pretty unfeasible and unaffordable. He is working on implementing this tech in areas of the world with huge sun exposure and the need for energy independence, including in, perhaps especially, in the Middle East, which is where that bit I said before about the solution lying in both the place of the greatest danger and also where it's most needed. There's something about that which seems to have a zodiacal resonance. Energy generation, carbon sequestering, and what might be called social enervating are what I think constitute the Leo mission. Producing a surplus of electricity isn't going to do us any good if it isn't going towards something that is actually going to be restorative. So it may be that we need to just start producing a surplus to start doing things like desalination or somehow refreezing the ice caps. Pure speculation on that. Intense synergy and cooperation will be needed with scientists from all fields to find the best outlets for these technologies. And so far, conversation on the topic has been quite limited because it's hard enough to get past the climate change denial and resistance to dissolving fossil fuel use. But I think if we can start to envision the practical applications later down the line, profitable byproducts, and potential job creation through clean energy, we can potentially bypass any of the unproductive ideological arguments. That might be part of the illuminating power of Leo through charisma and optimism, outlining bright possibilities out of the darkness. So in that regard, perhaps the most representative and influential Leo of our time is Joe Rogan. He is a huge inspiration to me personally, and in terms of human energy generation, I think he is one of the people out there doing the most. He facilitates bringing ideas to the forefront in a very candid, personal, warm, human way. And in a time where it's easy for the individual to feel like they're powerless, I think that's incredibly important. Everyone has a story to tell. Everyone is on a journey and has some piece of the truth to bring forward. And he really has a way of bringing out the best from people. If you watch an interview someone does with him versus hearing them talk somewhere else, it's like they're able to actually open up. Like he has a heliotropic effect. So while there are very real technical engineering problems that we need to address in order to achieve clean energy, we can't dismiss the importance of the human element and our critical need to get out of our own way. Sustainability is kind of more of an ideological problem at this point than a technical problem.